Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for joining. This is going to be a great event tonight. We're so excited that you all could be here and tune in. For anybody that does not know me, I'm Alex Heron. I am the Associate Director of Alumni and Parent Engagement. You might have seen me on some cultural credit events you've joined before, and if you have, welcome back. So again, we're very excited to have you all here tonight. We've got a great presentation lined up, so I'm going to get myself out of the way here in just a second and let them take over. I will just note for all of our students, any current students joining tonight, I will provide cultural credit information and how you collect that at the end of the presentation tonight. So we'll go through the event and then I'll provide you with the cultural credit information at the end. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to our presenters and let them introduce themselves, and I will let Jessica go first.
Hi everyone, I'm Jessica Hurtado. I am a very recent Stetson grad. I graduated this past May. I am currently an independent insurance specialist here at Solutions Group Wealth Management, and I've been with the firm since February. Mike, you want to go?
Yes, I'm Michael Payne, graduate of UCF back in '93. I've been in the financial industry, investments, financial planning since about 25 years now.
Hey everybody joining, thanks for joining us today. My name is Jonathan Paul. I'm an attorney down here in Altamont Springs area. I went to University of Florida for undergrad, went to law school at Florida State. And I'm here to learn in part just like you guys are, and listen to Mike and Jessica and hopefully share a little bit of my insight as well with respect to things that I wish I'd known when I was in college, shortly after college, even as a young professional, with respect to some really basic things that'll help you down the road. So I'm looking forward to tonight, and thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, you guys. We're excited. Okay, so I guess I'll get started. So I'm going to share screen. Bear with me a second. Okay. Okay, cool. So basics, financial must for young professionals. So when putting this event together, Jonathan, Mike, and I were kind of brainstorming, and we just wanted to put together, kind of like what Jonathan said, some information that we felt would have been useful for us to know when we were still in college or getting ready to graduate. And all of the information isn't necessarily going to be helpful like right this second, but it's so important for you to keep in mind and to start planning for your future, so that you can reach whatever goals that you have for your future. So I thought we would start off with financial foundations. So this is a pyramid that really explains the foundations of your financial health, if you will. So the bottom starts off with protect your foundation. So when looking at this pyramid, I would think of kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so it's kind of like just your basic needs that you need for your finances. So to start off, protect your foundation. Like building a house, you want to begin with a solid foundation so that you can only grow higher, more complicated from there. In order to accumulate and grow your wealth, you need to make sure that you protect what you already have. And that's kind of where budgeting, we're going to be talking about budgeting, life insurance, credit, investing, and estate planning, which are part of all levels of the pyramid. So budgeting is kind of going to help you start with that foundation and figure out where you want to move forward. Life insurance is a way to protect what you do have and what you build in the future. Credit is also a way to build your finances, and investing as well is going to be accumulating in growth. And estate planning, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, that is part of the preserving, making it last, and part of the protection as well. Awesome. So again, basics, but all essentials is what we're going to be talking about today. So starting off with budgeting basics, when talking about budgeting, and I'd like you guys to add some ideas into the chat, what are kind of like the first things that come to mind when we talk about budgeting? Now I don't have the chat pulled up, so I can't really look at it right now, but I would like you guys to just add in your thoughts. Now, when talking about budgeting, it can sound a little boring and tedious, but it's all about distinguishing your needs from your wants. So what does that mean? Your needs, of course, are going to be your basics, like food. You kind of need food to survive, shelter, and like clothes can be a need or a want depending on how you define it. I would say like water and like your health expenses are kind of needs. Wants are going to be like going out to a restaurant, going to the movies, your hobbies. And so once you define your needs and your wants, you're going to want to go and define some short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. So these are going to be goals that you define. So short-term is typically 6 months or shorter. Medium is going to be like anywhere from a year to like 10 years, and long-term goals is mostly like retirement planning. And so it's really important to have goals so you know exactly what you're saving for and how you want your money to work for you. So how will you reach those goals? And that's where the budgeting comes in. So that's where you track your income versus your expenses. So like, for example, let's say one of your medium goals, let's say in 10 years, one of my medium-term goals is to be able to buy a house. So when budgeting, I know that I'm going to want to set aside, let's say like create a different savings account and label it house. So every time I adjust my budget, I'm going to want to have a little category or a little section for that house. So I know that in creating that goal, I'm going to want to look forward in the future and figure out what it is I'm going to need to buy that house. So you're going to need a mortgage, and typically, of course, it depends on the housing market, because right now it's going a little crazy. But you're going to want to do some research, figure out, like how much money it would cost, what mortgage, like the interest rates would look like, how much money you'd want to save. And that would be like a medium term goal. A short term goal could be like, I want to take a vacation in the next like 4 to 5 months, and I want to go to the Bahamas or Hawaii. Virgin Islands. Yeah. So that's when you would take some time to research, like, okay, so a plane ticket on average would cost this much. When I go there, what does the economy in whatever location I want to go to look like, so I can guesstimate what my expenses would be when I go, and start saving up that amount of money. So in terms of going past goals and looking more at kind of like the needs, when you're budgeting, you're going to want to track your income versus your expenses so that you know exactly where your money is going, and so that you can figure out how to make it go where you want it to go. So a good rule is the 50-30-20 rule. So I don't know if any of you guys have heard of the 50-30-20 rule, but basically what that rule says is that 50% of your income goes to your needs, 30% of your income goes toward your wants, and 20% of your income goes towards savings and paying off debts. So a really good key point to keep in mind, or I guess like a saying you could call it, is like pay yourself first. So that's kind of where like the savings part for reaching your medium term, your long-term goals is super important, is that 20% that goes towards savings or toward paying off debts. You really want to make sure that you're making sure that happens. Because I know that this is something that I kind of used to do during high school, the beginning of college, when I didn't really know too much about personal finance. I knew that like, okay, like I have to put some money away for savings. But then my friends would be like, oh, Jess, like you want to go out to eat dinner, or, oh, you want to like go on a vacation, or you want to go to a concert. And then I'd look at like my income versus my expenses. And I know that the money I should have put to savings, I would have just been like, oh, okay, I can just pay myself later. And instead I would go to like a concert or something, because I didn't treat that savings portion, that 20%, as like another bill. So I would just say, okay, like I'll pay myself later instead of pay myself now. And that's kind of something that I wish I would have paid more attention to sooner, because it really is so important to develop that savings. And another rule, or kind of like rule of thumb, is you always want 10% to be in emergency savings. So you want to have at least 3 months of expenses saved up, 3 to 6 months, it depends on who you speak to, 3 to 6 months of your income or your expenses put away in your savings account that you do not touch. And that is your emergency savings fund. So in the example of COVID, like everyone talks about COVID and uses it as an example these days, and that actually, maybe that's kind of an outlier. I don't know that an emergency savings fund would have done much in the long term, but let's say you get into a car accident, or a hurricane comes, because we live in Florida, or I live in Florida. You guys live all over, but let's say a hurricane comes and does some damage to your house. While you're in the process of like doing all the insurance and everything and trying to figure out, assess the property damage and stuff, you have that emergency savings to lean back on. So in case you need to go to doctor or get your car fixed, you have that money so that it doesn't, you don't have to dip into this other savings that you have for your other medium-term, long-term goals. If you have any questions, again, please put them in the chat.
I think you can pop on the chat. Can you click on it?
Definitely. Okay. Giving you okay.
Is that a question on emergency fund?
No. Okay, so next. Okay, so now I'm going to be talking about life insurance 101. Just really quick, really brief. You may be asking, why are we talking about life insurance when I'm a college student? I know it sounds very boring and not super exciting, but it's really important to kind of demystify life insurance at a young age, so that you know how to make it work for you in the future. So typically when people think life insurance, they think families. That is not necessarily the case. So life insurance definition is transferring risk to a third party. So it's a contract in which the insurer, so the insurance company, promises to pay a sum of money, which is a death benefit, upon the death of the insured in exchange for a premium. Now that sounds a little very like cut and dry to the point, and it kind of is. Basically, the life insurance company, and this kind of goes for like all types of insurance, they look at you and your situation and they assess whatever risk you are to the company, and then they kind of decide like, yes, we'll insure you for this amount of money. So the premium is how much you pay in order to get that death benefit if something were to happen to you. So a term policy is a short-term insurance policy. So typically term policies are anywhere from 10 to 30 years. And a perm policy is permanent, just like it says. And so it lasts for typically your whole life or up until like age 95, age 100. So you can think of it kind of like renting versus owning, like car insurance versus an investment. So why am I talking about this? Because, and I don't know if this is necessarily your case, but there are, because Stetson is a small school, sometimes kids who graduate and then end up getting married. So that's super cute. We love that. Something that's important to think about is if that is you, and then if that isn't you down the line, maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. But if you get married, what do you think would happen to your spouse? Pretend you're married right now. What do you think would happen to your spouse if something were to happen to you today? And you were the income owner, or let's reverse roles. Your spouse was the income owner and something happened to them, and then, or they had more income than you, like what would happen to all those expenses while you're grieving, all the debts that they had. So life insurance is kind of there to help alleviate some of that pain and grief, I guess, that you go through when a loved one passes. I know a lot of personal friends and family who have kind of been saved with life insurance. So what it also can do is help cover some debts. And this is kind of something that is going to be important or can be considered for you guys. So let's go back to that house example. Let's say you are buying a house with your spouse, significant other, whatever, and you get a mortgage. So for that length of that mortgage, sometimes people like to get what's called mortgage insurance, and it is a short-term insurance policy that covers the length of the mortgage and the amount of the mortgage, so that as you pay off the mortgage, the life insurance policy decreases. But it's so that in the event that something were to happen while you had that mortgage, your loved ones or whoever was financially dependent on you would not have to worry about that mortgage. That life insurance policy would pay it off. Something could, so that's a term policy. When it comes to a perm policies have more financial flexibility and can be used more as an asset. So basically, a permanent life insurance policy is like a term policy on steroids a little bit. So it has since it is for the length of your life, there is a portion of the money that's put into this life insurance policy that is also invested. Now, it's nothing like what Mike's going to talk about later in the presentation, like super fancy investments. It is usually invested in mutual funds, or it's tied to an index, but it does earn cash value, and that money that grows throughout your lifetime can be used later down the line to take money out as a loan, and it's tax-free. You can use it to pay off, let's say, student loans, which some of us may have graduating from college, and you can also use the cash value to, I know that there have been some people who have used it to start businesses, and then once they, their business grows and they start earning more money, they just put that money back into that life insurance policy. But it is another option for something that grows tax-free, and the money that is given to the beneficiaries is also given tax-free. up to a certain point. And so, if you have any questions on life insurance, that was just a basic, something that you definitely should look into further down the line, and just kind of good to start thinking about now. Here's another thing about life insurance is the cost of life insurance, so like the premiums, is dependent on your age and your health. So it's always better to get a policy when you're younger than to wait till you're older, because you're gonna have to pay more for it.
Alrighty, my turn here, huh? If you can kind of keep me on time here, or else I'll get really, really long-winded. Especially when we get into the investments, I could literally take 45 minutes just on investments. One thing I wanted to add, on the budgeting, we have a really, really good expense sheet if anybody wants to utilize it. Maybe send us an email. Our contact information is at the end. You'll see our emails and telephone numbers. I got a really good expense sheet that will break down everything that you can think of, down to dog food and such like that. It's really good to know what your expenses are going into, because if you're spending every dollar that you make, or you're putting all your money in one account and paying your bills out of that same account, then a lot of times you lose track of your budget. But credit, why credit? In my opinion, I've done lots and lots of financial plans as a financial planner, and I've found that it is really good to have good credit, as you can imagine. I've run across people who have no credit. Believe it or not, in a lot of cases, no credit is worse than having bad credit. Because if you go in without ever having a credit card or ever having a loan or anything like that, and all of a sudden you want to establish a credit card, or you want to go out and buy that first car or what have you, that can hurt you by not having credit. So it's always good to open up a small credit account or credit card or something of that nature to get you going. And that way you'll start developing a credit score as you go along. Now we are, many of you may have heard of Beacon Score. Beacon Score is basically Transamerica, Equifax, and Experian. These are the companies that rate you. These are the ones that track your credit. These are the ones that when Visa is looking to issue you a credit card, that's the information that they're pulling from. So it's very important, once again, to try and keep yourself relatively clean on credit. I'll give you a couple of examples in a moment. Credit score is really made up of payment history. You got a good payment history, or you got a bad payment history. I always try and pay my bills in the very beginning of the month. That way I get everything out of the way. They see that it's coming in. A lot of times too, I'll try and pay a little bit extra. Believe it or not, if you just pay in that $30 required a month, sometimes it looks bad on your credit. If you're paying like $100 on a $50 bill or something like that, that always helps you out as well. Credit utilization, as I mentioned, you want to have credit cards. You don't want to have 100 of them or 1,000 or what have you, but you want to have a good number of credit cards. And to go back to a little piece of advice for you, if you ever pay off a credit card, don't close it out. Even if you don't want to use it, or cut it, stick it in your drawer, just remember you have it, or keep it in your little side file that says that, yeah, I had this credit card, but I don't use it anymore. The minute you close your credit card down, it lowers the amount of debt that you're allocated. So it'll actually lower down your credit score. Length of credit history, obviously, if you've been using credit cards for 20 years and you've got a spotless record, that's really going to help you out. If you have a very short credit history, that can hurt you. That's why many of you, if you haven't started a little bit, maybe just have one credit card or two. If you haven't done that, you may look into doing that just to get yourself established. Now, it gets weird with credit cards. A lot of them have high interest rates and such. So you may want to look and search around because a lot of credit card companies charge upwards of 30%, 29%, 28%. You want to try and keep it low, but when you're first starting out, you may want to just start it up and, hey, say it's a 25, 26% credit card. Well, you know what, go buy yourself a pair of jeans and then pay it off. And then next month, go buy yourself a brand new tie or something and then go pay it off. Go out, play golf and then go pay it off. And what you're going to find out is as long as you're paying that credit card on time, your debt is going to, or your interest rate should start coming down. Next thing you know, you're going to get hammered with different offers from different credit card companies. So just be careful with the ones that are really high. It'd be great if you could get, I'd be honest with you, it's really tough to find a credit card you can get for under 10% unless you're a millionaire like JP or something like that. Types of credit use, you want to buy a house, you want to buy a car, you're going to have a credit associated, a credit history on that. You want to get a credit card, of course, those are the most common. One other thing, recent inquiries into credit score. One thing that will really damage your credit score is if you, instead of applying for one credit card, 1 month, all of a sudden you apply for 16. Believe it or not, that's going to kill your credit score. Even if you just apply for one score, you can expect your credit rating to go down slightly, say 7 points or something like that. Okay. Reasons for establishing purchase. Well, it's kind of obvious. What if you want to buy that car? Are you going to pay $30,000, $25,000 all up front for the car? You're most likely going to want to take out a loan on it. Now, loan credits and such like that on cars and such, you can get them pretty low. It's good to go through your banks or your credit unions or such to try and find those. Very good credit unions usually have lower interest rates than banks, not all the time. Emergency uses, you need credit. What happens if you get a hole in your roof on that brand new house that you have? Or what happens if you need to buy a car because your car just blew up? Those are the emergencies why you should have some kind of credit where you can lay out a sum of money that you may not have saved up for. Real briefly, tactics. Some people may have gotten in trouble with credit cards. It's easy. I mean, things are expensive, and jobs aren't what they used to be back years ago and such. It's honestly, it's tough. And for you younger guys, I'm pretty impressed. I see a lot of sharp younger people, and I'm like, how did you manage to navigate yourself through all that? Because jobs are tight. Sometimes you have to get a second job and such. But there's things that you can do to fix your credit as well. One thing that I'm just going to pick out of the hat right now that I've used it just to increase my beacon score, my overall credit rating, was credit cards. Or think of them as like the bottom feeder of credit. That will always give you a bad rating if you have over too many or you've got them all maxed out. What I always try and do, and what I've heard through different credit agencies and such, is you want to try and keep your credit at about 40% of your debt. So in other words, if you have a $10,000 credit card, you may only want to run it up to $4,000. This way, you're keeping under that. Once you start going over the 50% range, believe it or not, that will start dragging down on your credit rating. Okay. Another thing that you can do if you have too many credit cards and your beacon's hurting a little bit is look at such devices as term loans. Term loans, you may see them like Prosper, Best Egg, Lending Tree and things like that. They're wanting to give you money. These people are actively looking to give you money. And a lot of times they can take your credit cards and consolidate into one term loan and bring your credit rating up, and at the same time decrease your payment, believe it or not. So term loans are always good if you ever get in that credit card jam. With that, if we move on to investments. Now this is my forte, so I'm gonna try and keep it a little bit brief, but dollar cost averaging is by far one of the best ways of investing. Before I go into that, however, just a little bit of a basics. A stock is a company, okay? A company issues stock to raise money. There's no money guarantee that you're gonna get your money back, but if you pick good stocks, your money will go up. You pick bad stocks, your money will go down. So stock isn't really they're not telling you that you're going to get your money back. It's not a certificate. Oh, here's your stock certificate. You're going to get your money back. Now, if you go down to bonds, bonds are a lot more conservative. And under most cases, if you hold a bond to term, in other words, if it's 10-year term and you hold that money for 10 years, you're going to get your money back or your principal back. Okay. Now, if you buy bond mutual funds, which a mutual fund is a conglomerate of different bonds or stocks or both. You can buy bond mutual funds. You can buy stock mutual funds. And sorry if I'm getting a little bit basic, but I just want to warm everybody up with that. But you can buy bond mutual funds or stock mutual funds, or you can buy balanced funds, which are mixtures of bond and stocks. But whenever I diversify a client's portfolio, even if they're aggressive, there's always a little bit of bond in there, okay? Because it's a way of controlling the volatility. So a retired client might have 60% in stock, 40% in bonds, okay? They're still gonna have that bond mixture. Now, you can have different types of bonds that aren't only paying 1 or 2% like interest rates are going. And interest rates are tough right now because, and I wouldn't expect them to change for some time because we're really at the end of a 30-year bull market in bonds. You know, when interest rates were going down, bond prices were going up. So you were making money as interest rates went down on your bonds because you were holding bonds at higher interest rates. Now they're issuing bonds at lower rates and you're making money off of it. But now we've come to a point where bonds are really, really low in interest rates. You've seen CD rates, bank rates, and all that are really in the gutter right now. So what's going to happen, and what has happened, is interest rates start to trickle up a bit. Now, it's not really a big concern for you all because you're young, you're coming out of college. Some of you may be established now. I'm assuming we have some alumni on the call and such. When you invest, if you do invest, good chance a lot of your money's going to be into stocks where you get more growth potential. But when you're on fixed income or you're retired, lower interest rates really hurt people. And as interest rates go up, which they are starting to do now, then what happens is bond prices start to fall. So you can actually lose money in bonds, especially when the Fed comes out and raises interest rates. So that's a little bit about stocks and bonds. So stocks, of course, is shares in the company. Bonds is a company can issue stuff in bonds. They issue a certificate, and a lot of times they'll pay higher rates than like government bonds and things like that. But if you hold them to term, you can always get your money back, unless, of course, the company goes under or goes bankrupt. And you really want to stay away from risky bonds because they can lose money just as much as a risky stock can. Mutual funds, once again, Mutual funds are diversified. You could have hundreds of different stocks in just one mutual fund. You can have hundreds of bonds in one mutual fund. Some of my portfolios have literally thousands of stocks and bond securities in one portfolio. Now, why do you do that? It's because you want to diversify. All right. There's two types of investment. There's diversification, asset allocation, and then there's risky buying stocks. Now it's fun to buy stocks. I buy stocks on the side, individual stocks. Okay. But whenever you buy stocks, you're really losing statistical probabilities of holding a portfolio of many different stocks. And you're putting it into something that doesn't have these statistical probabilities. So it's more like gambling, to be quite honest with you. So stocks can go up and down by a lot. A growth stock has about 4 times the risk inherent into it that a growth mutual fund does. So all the allure and all the attraction is to the stock market, especially after these last couple of years where the market's been blasting off. You know, people are telling me, oh, I just made 70% on my stocks and everything like that. That is great, and I'd never chase you away from it. But you have to look at it more as a whole. You want to take the money that you want to make money off of or try and make money off of, and you want to diversify it. And you always want to portion out a portion of your money into stocks. So you got a little bit of the gambling along with a little bit of the good steady diversification and such. That's a little bit on that. I went into the rule of 72 right now because it's a great rule to figure out why do I want to invest. The rule of 72 states that if you divide 72 by the rate of return that you're averaging or getting, or the interest rate for that matter that you're getting on a bond or a CD, if you divide 72 by that rate, you get the number of years it takes you to double your money. So just to make it easy, say I've got a portfolio and it's doing 12%, and I put 10,000 into it. Well, 12% divided into 72 is 6, right? So it's taken me 6 years to take my $10,000 and double it to $20,000, okay? Real easy figure to figure in there. Just divide your interest rate or your performance into 72. I say this because what is the alternative for your savings, your long-term savings, not your short-term savings, but your long-term savings? Your alternative is the banks, okay? And just think about your $10,000 and think about the rule of 72 and look at the interest rates that they're paying at the bank. They're paying you 1/4%, 25 basis points. Okay, 1% equals 100 basis points. So the bank is paying you 25 basis points or 0.25%. Now do the rule of 72. Divide 0.25 into 72. You come up with 288. I don't know how healthy you all are, but I don't think I'm going to double my money in 288 years. Maybe my great-great-grandparents or my great-great-grandchildren can manipulate off of that or gain that money, but I'm not, because I'm not going to live 288 years to double my money. So a little bit about rule of 72. It's always good. Just take the interest rate you're making, divide it into 72, give you an idea. You can do all the figuring you want. You can calculate your long-term savings. Like I said, everybody should have a nest egg, an emergency fund. Keep it at the bank. Don't gamble it away, because what happens if you gamble it away and you need to buy a new car? Okay. How much time do I have? Are we good or we're good?
Yeah, we got it.
You want me to stop here?
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
Okay. Just quick thing about dollar cost averaging. You all heard about dollar cost averaging. Putting a little bit of money into your investments over the long run is a great way of doing things. That way you don't have to worry about putting all your money into one portfolio, a growth portfolio. You put 100K into your growth portfolio and automatically the market drops 20%. Now you're down to $20,000. Well, if you dollar cost average, you put that money in. I'll even, if somebody's transferring me a big chunk of money from an IRA or some kind of rollover, what I'll do is a lot of times I'll put in a dollar cost averaging portfolio and let it slowly go into the market, maybe 1/12 of it over the next year. That really helps out your investment. It lowers the cost per share and actually helps you make more money or actually helps you weather the volatility of the market. Okay, that's it.
Hey guys, and so I'm an estate planning attorney here in Altamont Springs. Handle stuff all over the Central Florida area. So part of the follow-up from what Mike and Jessica were talking about is how do you pass on, hopefully, this nest egg, some sort of bundle that you're able to pass along to the next generation, right? Or the people that you like, and avoid giving it maybe to the people that you dislike. So you need a simple estate plan. It doesn't need, you don't need like several levels of trusts and LLCs set up and things like that as a young adult. But to have a really basic estate plan, like a really simple will, and two really important documents are healthcare documents, so a healthcare surrogate and a living will, and possibly a durable power of attorney, will really help in making financial decisions if you're unable to make them yourselves, or making medical decisions on your own. So, like I said here, I assume you have people in your lives that you love, that you care about, maybe even people that you dislike, and maybe those people happen to be your family members that you dislike. Well, if you don't have a will, a simple will saying, hey, I want Johnny to get this stuff, but I don't want Jake to get this stuff. If you don't have that, the government gets to decide what happens with your assets when you pass away. So they just follow the rules that are laid out in the statutes. So if you want a charity, a church, a school like Stetson, which should definitely get some of your money when you guys are, gone. So, so if you want a specific entity to get your items, your wealth, or a portion of that, you need to designate that either in your insurance policy, beneficiary designations, or in your wills. Otherwise, like I said, it just follows the statutory rules. It'll go to your parents if you don't have any, if you don't have a spouse or any children. So having a really basic estate plan is extremely helpful and effective. I'm going to give you an example. Of why a durable power of attorney might be a good idea for a young professional. I don't know about you guys, but I like to travel. Okay, so when I'm overseas and I need to get something done back in the United States, but I'm not here to sign for it, having a durable power of attorney on file with a bank or with a credit card company or with my mortgage company can help get those things effectuated if my attorney, in fact, is here and can help me get those things done, because otherwise I might not have access to what I need. So having a power of attorney isn't just for, if you're unable to do something because you're laying on a gurney somewhere. It can be helpful even if you're just traveling and need something taken care of. So durable power of attorneys are fantastic. Other important things that I think are the cornerstone of any estate plan are healthcare surrogates and living wills, right? So if you get into, all of us have driven on I-4, right? If you've driven on I-4 lately, you know that it's a total disaster and a total mess. Let's say you get into a car accident and you can't make a decision for yourself from a medical perspective. You want to have somebody identified that can help you make those medical decisions, that knows what you want done, and can rely on the opinions and help from doctors to make informed consent decisions and continue to help you make medical choices. A living will is also extremely helpful in a scenario where you've got an end stage condition, or if you're in a persistent vegetative state, Many of you are probably too young to remember this, but there was a lady by the name of Terry Schiavo here in Florida about 17 years ago that gave rise to this. And there were literally laws passed at the last minute on the federal level to try and basically keep her alive. She'd been in her persistent vegetative state for many years. Her husband wanted to pull the plug, and her parents wanted to keep her alive and on artificial means. So ultimately, Florida has a law in place. It's a statutory form that you can complete, and it basically says, I want to have life-sustaining measures withdrawn in 3 sets of circumstances. But you need to identify a person that can help the medical providers make that decision. So other really basic estate planning myths: I don't need a power of attorney, I'm young and healthy. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm also young and healthy, relatively young and healthy, but I like to travel. So it helps to have that power of attorney on file in the hands of the person that can make those decisions. Again, I don't need a living will or healthcare surrogate because my family knows what I want and the doctors will listen. Not necessarily. The doctors, if they don't have a specific person that they can speak to, they may well not listen. And then you may have to go out and get a guardianship, will cost you tens of thousands of dollars in many cases. I'm too young to worry about estate planning. No, you are not. Everybody needs to consider estate planning if you're over the age of 18. For the purposes that I've mentioned. If you have any assets at all, you've got a car, you've got a house, you've got a dog or a cat that you want taken care of when you pass away by somebody in particular. Those items can all be addressed in a very, very basic estate plan. And I don't need a will because I'm not wealthy. Well, that's why you need a will, is if you're not wealthy, you don't want to spend a whole bunch of money or have your heirs spend a whole bunch of money in court fighting about the dog that they also really like. If somebody you know wanted to have that dog, or if you wanted somebody to have that dog, or a vase, or a car, or a house, or whatever, you're not too young, you're not too poor to need a will. I don't care where you get a will. People go online and get wills, and they're also perfectly effective, but they're really important things to have in place to make sure that the people you love and care about get your possessions when you pass on. So those are some of the really basic uses of a simple estate plan. I'd also like to throw out there, I mentioned this to Jessica when we were brainstorming some ideas. Your life is run by a series of contracts, okay? Those contracts can be mortgages. Those contracts can be leases for homes, cars. Those contracts are for student loans, right? Those contracts are marriages, okay? Everything you do in life, your phone, right? You got your phone. There's a contract that you signed when you turn that phone on. So read the fine print, because if you don't, you're going to be stuck with whatever the terms are, and you won't even have an opportunity to negotiate those terms or look at those terms or even understand those terms. So be sure you read the contracts that you're signing. Be sure that you consider simple wealth preservation options like life insurance, like low cost investing options, and like a very basic estate plan. So that's my spiel regarding why an estate plan is important for young adults, for young professionals, and even for folks in their early to mid 30s with growing families. So thanks everybody. Thanks for having us. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. We can take it from there.
Awesome. Thank you all for your wonderful presentation tonight, and thank you for a great and active chat. I know we've got a lot of opinions floating around in the chat, which is great. We love to have a great chat going on throughout all these events, so we do appreciate all the comments. There were some questions submitted beforehand that I did want to ask. One from Bonnie Holloway, who is a Stetson alum and a beloved professor here at Stetson. She asked and this can be for anyone in the group who wants to jump in and answer, what are your thoughts on disability insurance?
Okay, so disability insurance, thoughts. I think if you have the means to get it, it's super important, because life is kind of filled with uncertainties. You never know what could happen at what moment in time. So the purpose of disability insurance, both short-term disability insurance and long-term disability insurance, is to cover your source of income in the event that something were to happen to you and you would not be able to go to work. So disability insurance typically covers 60 to 70% of your income. And depending on if it's short-term or long-term, gives you monthly sums of money. Of course, it works kind of the same way as life insurance, where they assess your risk and then you have to pay premiums. But again, in the event that something were to happen, it would cover you until you could recover and then return back to work. And there are all sorts of like fancy like additions that you could add to your policy that allow you to remain covered in the event that your disability were to reoccur, or illness, injury, whatever. And also it would yes, cover you in the event that something were to happen again, within a specific amount of time. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would simply add, I have disability insurance on myself. The best thing to look at it is, you know, let's say you have a car and this car is worth $30,000, $40,000, and you don't have auto insurance on it. You get in a wreck and the car is totaled. You just lost $30,000, $40,000. But consider if you get injured, because it may not only be short term, but it can be long term. If you're injured and can't go back to work and you don't have disability insurance, unfortunately, it is quite possible, you know, you could be looking at millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars of loss just simply from taking your income out of the picture. And then plus, you know, to support your loved ones, your spouse, take care of your kids and such. What happens if the main money maker is taken out? A lot of times, you know, you have to go for government help at that point. So.
Thank you. And then another one that was submitted: are government bonds still worth buying, or does inflation make them worthless?
Good question. You know, if you're looking at something at government bonds, I think the 10-year, to hold a 10-year government bonds like 1.5, 1.6. I don't know if anybody's familiar with what the rate on a 10-year treasury bond is. If you need short-term money or you need money to buy something, you need to keep it basically in the bank, and you're getting next to nothing. But it's there for when you need it. To go into a bond for 10 years at 1.5, 1.6%, that is not, and that's a good point, that is not even outpacing inflation. You know, good thing to remember is your money, like 1, 2, 3 years out, you want to keep it close to the bank. Think of it keeping it close to the bank. But as you go out further, you can mix. So you might be conservative. Instead of doing a 10-year bond, you may want to throw maybe 20% of stock in it. So have like 80-20 portfolio or something of that nature. But you're right, 10-year bond in this environment just is not worth it with inflation. You're actually losing money.
Right, I know we are running short on time. I have two more that I want to get to. So this first one: do you believe the 50-30-20 rule still applies, or does the model need tweaking with ever-changing life circumstances?
I would definitely say that it just kind of depends on, it's like very situational. So I would say if definitely with life changing circumstances, I would say it probably definitely needs tweaking, especially to your own liking. So I know for me, I like to put away more than just 20% towards savings and debts. For me, it's more like 50-50%, and then wants are kind of like put aside right now, since I did just graduate and I am just trying to build my base, my foundation right now. So for me, that's how I tweak it for me. And so it also depends, I guess, on the stage of like life, your financial journey that you are right now as well. Because that's just like a very general rule, but like with all general rules in all aspects of life, you kind of take that and tweak it, so to speak, to your own personal circumstances, your own whatever peace of mind is for you.
If I can add to that too, along with what Jessica said, it's sometimes it gets personal, your personal feelings. Like for instance, if you make $50,000 and the rules say keep 6 months of income in savings, I have clients who absolutely will not put 25,000 into a bank account with the rates being so low. So it kind of gets personal. There's rules and then personality takes over. So you may, once again, you have $100,000 for that month. Do you want to keep 50,000 in, making 0.25 and double it in 288 years? But at the same time, it's always good to be a little bit on the conservative side and at least have some kind of emergency fund where you can get by if anything happens.
Great. And then this last one that we'll kind of close it off with. And we do have a lot of younger, either current students or recent graduates on this call. So this is a great question. Any advice on paying off or bundling personal student loans?
So for personal student loans, just because I'm also kind of going through this, definitely I would think debt consolidation, if you can. I don't know if Mike's gonna agree. And then also if you have the option to do like an income repayment plan, and that's where they change your, correct me if I'm wrong, your payment and your interest rate depending on your income source, like how much money you're making, so that like if you have a ridiculous interest rate on like a private student loan, if you have that option, you can bring that interest rate down a little bit, depending on how much money you're earning.
I would look to you as the expert because I'm 56 years old and I consolidated, I extended, I did all this, and I just paid my my student loan off. I think about 2 years or 3 years.
I've got some advice on student loans, guys. I work with a lawyer. I actually defend some private student loan debt collection cases from time to time when they come up. I like defending those cases because all of my student loans, to the extent that I have them, are federal. So I can't discharge them even if I wanted to file bankruptcy. So I like to fight with the private student loan companies when I can. But if you're able to do it, pay the interest while you're in school. Okay, that'll help keep the numbers low. If you've got federal loans, get on an income-based repayment plan. If you're going to go to work out of college or out of graduate school, consider, if it's in your wheelhouse, consider going to work for a not-for-profit or a public entity. Go to work for a school system, go to work for a hospital system, something along those lines that's not for profit, and you can apply for the debt forgiveness program, which I believe is 120 payments, so that's 10 years, and after which time the debt will be, under the current law anyway, will be forgiven. So those are all things to keep in mind. There's a lot of ways to play with student loan debt, public versus federal, versus consolidated versus all sorts of things. But my suggestion is, if you can pay the interest, don't do what I did and not pay the interest. Pay the interest while you're in school. Try to avoid deferring payments because the interest just keeps mounting and it keeps getting capitalized. So do what you can to pay them down. Pay a little extra every month on those student loans, because student loan debt just sucks, guys. It's just the worst. I'd rather have credit card debt than student loan debt, to be honest with you, because my student loan debt, it's still there. I hate paying it every month, and just work on getting it paid down, and make smart decisions with the student loan debt. It's not free money. When I was going into college, everybody talked about how student loan debt is like free money because the interest rates were so low. Well, now the interest rates, the prime rates are so much lower than when I was in school 20 years ago that when I see that bill every month, I cringe. So, you know, do what you can to avoid those loans, but obviously sometimes they're needed, and just do what you can to pay them down. The monthly payments when you're in school are small. Do what you can. And income-based is a great idea too, Jessica. IBR is fantastic, a fantastic option. So.
Excellent. So we are at about 7 o'clock. So I just want to say thank you to everyone again for participating tonight. For any current students on the call, if you've been on any of our cultural credit events before, usually I make you do a quiz afterwards. I am feeling very nice this week. So when you registered, you should have dropped your 800 number in your registration form. I will take that and I will submit that to the registrar. So you will get your cultural credit. It'll appear in about 3 to 5 days after this event. So I'll submit that tomorrow. But again, if you registered for this event and you are a current student, you should have submitted your 800 number on the registration form. So I'll take that to get you your cultural credit. If you for some reason did not put your 800 number in, I'm going to drop my email in the chat, and just feel free to email me and let me know that you were at this event and give me your 800 number and I'll make sure it gets submitted so you get your cultural credit. And then you see on the screen, everybody's dropped their contact information. If you'd like to reach out or connect with them at all, please feel free to do so. And if you happen to not jot anything down, just reach out to me. Again, I drop my email in the chat and I can connect you with them all. So again, thank you all for coming tonight and for participating. Again, everybody has some great opinions and great thoughts. Thank you for sharing those in the chat. And a huge thank you to Jessica, Mike, and Jonathan for putting together this presentation and joining us tonight. It was fantastic. So I thank the three of you for doing this.
Thank for having us.
Thank you.
you.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.